Hello and welcome to JavaScript Marathon, a full week of free online courses in some of the leading web development technologies and concepts. Excited to introduce you to Tom Van Antwerp, Senior Software Engineer at This.Labs. Welcome, Tom, to your first JavaScript Marathon.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
He is going to be presenting Building Your Own Style Framework with Vanilla Extract. Special thanks to our sponsor, This.Labs, offering personalized training programs to suit your organizational needs, ensuring you and your company stay on the leading edge. If you find keeping up with constantly evolving technologies a struggle and want to bring your team up to speed on one of the latest technologies, contact us today at hi@this.co to set up your complimentary needs assessment. This.Labs is hiring. If you're a senior software engineer or developer advocate, send us your info at jobs@this.co. You can also check out our detailed job descriptions at this.co/jobs. We have a ton of upcoming events happening in the next few weeks. React Mentoring with Dustin Goodman and Jesse Tomchak is next week, along with State of You with Evan Yu and Simone Cuomo. React World Tour makes a stop in New York City in partnership with Real World React, and Angular Mentoring kicks off with Rob Osell. Our last JavaScript session of the week is live tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be presenting Exploring Nuxt 3 and Composition API with Adesoji. And JavaScript Marathon returns on May 16th for another week of training. We'll be presenting Cloudflare, Node, and serverless training, and more. You can find out all the details at javascriptmarathon.com. And with that, I will turn it over to Tom.
Thanks, Sarah. So, as we mentioned today, we are talking about Vanilla Extract, and no, I don't mean this one. Vanilla Extract is a framework for creating zero runtime CSS using TypeScript. We'll get into some of the details. I'm Tom Van Antwerp. I'm Senior Software Engineer at This.Dot. Before we get into what Vanilla Extract is and how to use it, we'll go over a little bit of what is the problem that we're trying to solve with Vanilla Extract and what are some of the other solutions that exist? Why is it different? Why would you want to use this? So getting into it, let's talk about CSS. So CSS can be pretty difficult when you're building something quite large. It's fine when you're writing a little bit for one page or one component, but for an entire app, you really need an entire system. And CSS has never been terribly good at this. It can get very repetitive. It's limited in how you can write it on its own, very verbose. And it can be very hard to organize your CSS in a way that makes sense, where you know where it is in relation to all of your files, what is applying to what. And once you've got a large team, lots of people, lots of moving pieces, all of these problems can get magnified. So it's important to have some kind of a system, an organizing principle, a way to get around a lot of the little issues that CSS can cause. And there have been many attempts to tweak CSS to make it easier. Everything from frameworks that just say, here's a class, just use this class if you're trying to build X, to things like CSS in JavaScript so you can co-locate styles with your code, preprocessors, whole other versions of CSS like Sass, and more recently, things like Tailwind that provide a lot of utility classes, so you don't have to write quite as much. So where does Vanilla Extract fit into all of this? Vanilla Extract is in some ways like Tailwind. You can write a lot of utility classes that are just going to be compiled to plain old CSS file. It's, even though you're writing Vanilla Extract in TypeScript, it's not really CSS in JS. It's not being evaluated at runtime. But because you are writing it in TypeScript, you do get a lot of the type safety that TypeScript affords. So you can have that slightly superior developer experience of writing in a JavaScripty way, but without the problem with the client side having to evaluate all the styles that you wrote. Everything I just said. And you can, in a way very similar to Tailwind, create your own utility classes with vanilla extract. Personally, every time I'm using Tailwind on any project, I have to keep the Tailwind docs open all the time because I just don't know the names of every little utility class that they make available. And I'm constantly trying to translate, okay, I know I want this in CSS, go find it in the Tailwind docs. Okay, that's what it's supposed to be, and I'll stick that in. With something like vanilla extract, really you're building your own system, your own framework. So you don't have to constantly reference documentation to figure out what is it that I needed to type on this component to get the CSS. You wrote it, you know what it is. And again, because it's TypeScript, you can even have things like IntelliSense autocompletion to tell you, hey, you have totally put the wrong value in here, red squiggly line, go back, check what you did. So you can help yourself in a way that's a little harder with something like Tailwind. That's enough of an introduction. Let's get into some coding. And I have got right here just a totally blank, empty React app that we are going to be working out of, set up with Vite. And currently there is absolutely nothing in here except everything we need to run this app, and of course my little things to make everything pretty. And we've got vanilla extract itself, and we'll go over what all of these are in time. Right now, we've got absolutely nothing going on here. So let's start writing some stuff. I think first we'll need to make some components, and let's start with a button. I want that to be a folder. And we'll create our button component file here. Let's see, more. And very simple stuff so far. Very boring. I've got a few things that I can put in here for TypeScript-y purposes. And because I don't want to have, nobody's interested in just watching me type a bajillion things. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some props. We'll get to that later. And we're going to need children, and we're going to need on-click button. I want to be zoomed in enough that everyone can see what's going on, but I don't want to be so zoomed in that I can't even see what I'm typing. Isn't this the fun thing about live code? Because that's in the wrong spot. Anyway, so now we got our basic boring button that does pretty much nothing. Go ahead and add it to our basic boring app. And let's make the button do something. Again, very boring. We're going to get to the styles very soon. Import that. Okay. We'll say on clicking this button, we will increment this count. And we will say, I have been clicked count times true date. So not a whole lot interesting happening here. Let's make sure this is in fact running. Where is my button? Where is my button? Live coding, everyone. Does anyone know where my button is? Anyone see my button? You forgot to save. There's my button. Thank you, Dustin. So, basic boring button, nothing interesting going on there. Now it's time to style it. And I'm going to do that with vanilla extract. This naming convention here is important, by the way. Any file where you're going to be using vanilla extract, you want to have whatever name .css.ts. That's partly how vanilla extract is able to know what it is that you're working on. Otherwise, things could get not working correctly. And I'm going to move some things around on a different screen so I can see everything you're saying and everything that I'm doing. So first thing, I'm going to import style from vanilla extract and say button style equals style, and we're going to give an object. And inside this object is going to be our basic styles. We're going to put whatever we want in here for this button. I've already chosen a few things, but let's do some standard stuff. Border, it's going to be none. I don't like those borders. Border radius, however, we'll give it, say, 8 pixels. And you're going to start seeing the trick, probably the hardest part about writing vanilla extract, is that you're writing a JavaScript object. You're not writing CSS. So you have to remember none of this and no just regular values. You're going to have to put things into strings, and you're going to have to camel case all your CSS property names. And again, hopefully, because this is TypeScript, it will yell at you if you're doing things in a way that you should not. Let's say background color. What should we make our background color? Let's make it RGB 230, 15. I'm just making this up as we go. That's very pink. Let's not that pink. Maybe just 200 or 170. Yeah, it's a little better. And color. And again, remember to make everything string. Again, that is the hardest part of vanilla extract. So we've created some basic styles that we're exporting, and now we will import that into our button component. And we'll add that with a class name. Is that what I actually named that? It's down. And now we can see our button is, I won't say much prettier, but it's improved. So what have we done here? We've created, using vanilla extract, this basic style, fed it an object, and we've created this object full of CSS properties. Once we import, we feed that into the components class name in this React app. And it's worth noting, this is not just for React. You could use this with pretty much anything. I'm just using React for demo purposes. But I want to show you what this actually looks like. So in our code, we can see that the class is now this hashed value. And the fact that it says style underscore underscore here, that's just because we're in development mode. In production after build time, it would only be the hash part right here. And these are all of the properties that we have set. And here in development, and this depends how you do it, but here in development, it's being just inlined into this style tag. In build, it would be its own CSS file. So pretty straightforward so far. Now, let's say I want more than this button. This is a nice plum color button, but plum isn't enough for me. I need other color buttons. Well, easy enough. We can make some other color buttons. Let's say this is the plum button. And let's try some values here. I don't know what color this is going to be until I'm done with it. Let's go somewhere, and it's sort of a, what would you call that, a viridian? I'm going to call it green because close enough. I don't know my colors that well. I call that green button. So save that. That would break those styles there. Button, green button. I can just choose which one I want. Let's say I want this to be the green button now. Save. Now it's the green button. You're seeing some problems right away with this approach. There's duplication of code between these styles, and there's not really a good way to say, do I want the green one or do I want the plum one? And I don't want to have a separate button component that is identical except for, is it plum or is it green? So we'll solve these problems in turn. First, what I can do is create a base style. I'm going to move all of the shared bits into that. So now these other two styles will only control what that color is. And in order to use this in combination with the others, I could, in here, I could use a package like class names to combine the color with that base style, or I could even have an array where I join the values, because again, they all end up as just strings that reference styles, but I don't want to do that. What I'm going to do is a style can take not just an object, but it can take an array of things. And I can feed as one of the values in this array, my base button style. And do the same for this green button, make it an array, and base button one of the values of that array. So now I've got all of those styles in there. I could switch back to plum button. Everything still works, and I've that file open now, and I've deduplicated some of the things that are going on in this bit of code. There is an even better way to do this, and especially since we're still trying to figure out how do we dynamically switch these colors. Now we're going to bring in something called style variants. And this will let us have a single style, but with different variations for some of the styles that can be specified when you use it. So I'll just create a whole new style for this so I can have everything still where I can see it. And create an object. And we've got two variants. We've got our plum and we've got our green. And again, in both of these cases, we're going to have the base button styles. And we're going to add in these styles as well. And now we don't need these. And we'll export that. So this is where it's going to start to get really neat. So replace these imports with button style once again. And now I can say something like that. And I should get my plum button. Or I get my green button. We only have to import the one style. We only have the one button component, but we can dynamically decide what variant of the style that we want. So this is pretty cool stuff. And one problem we have here is that this is still sort of hard-coded in. We want to be able to use this component without knowing for sure, oh, it's always green or it's always plum. We want to be able to say, hey, stick a button here, and I guess this one should be green. I guess this one should be plum. It's not dynamic enough yet. So what we're going to be able to do is, let's say, background. And this is going to be key of type of button style. And we're going to have this new prop, background. And just feed it in. Now, of course, that breaks because we haven't passed that anywhere in the app yet. And now we can see, because TypeScript is cool, hey, we're missing this property background. You have to give it a background. So background equals, and because, again, it's TypeScript, I get these types. These are my only options. It's going to tell me green or plum. You got to pick one. And now we can use this button anywhere that we want and just change that color whenever we need it changed. Hooray. And of course, you probably don't want to have the same count state for these, but this isn't a demonstration of React. This is a demonstration of vanilla extract. So sorry, you'll have to learn about React state management somewhere else. So those are style variants, and they are very handy. Another thing we'll probably want to talk about is themes while we're still on the topic of styles. So you can see that I have set these colors entirely manually. These are effectively magic numbers. They only exist in this file, and if I wanted to make some other component somewhere else one of these colors, I can't just reference it from somewhere central right now. This is hidden away in the code. So with vanilla extract themes, you can solve that problem and make these available. And I'm going to make a theme.css.ts file. We're going to import the contract, and I don't know what that's about. And root. Okay. I'll move that a bit. So here is what we are going to do with themes. Themes can be a little odd to start with, but once you figure out how it works, it's fairly handy. What we're going to do to lead up with is I'm going to just create empty theme. This is going to be basically nothing. I'm going to have a colors prop, and I've got plum, and I'm going to just set it to black. That's weird, right? The values that you feed in here don't really matter so much. What this is an object that's going to be used to create a theme contract. The theme contract basically just says, hey, when you're making a theme and you use me to make the theme, you have to have these properties defined. The theme has to have some value given for plum and for green. It's not going to use these values here, but it will demand that you provide a value. So we're going to create a theme contract based off of that empty theme. And now we have access to these as far. And the next thing I'm going to do is create a global theme that's going to make these colors available at the root of this project as CSS custom properties. I'm going to say these go at the root. I'm using the vars theme contract, and now pass in an object that matches the shape of what's in empty theme, and I can actually say what my colors are going to be. I'll come back here and get these out. Okay, so now we've got a global theme with a couple of colors. And that's pretty handy. That's nice to have. We can go back to here, and instead of having things hard-coded in, we're going to use that theme contract that we built and say that this is going to be plum. So now we don't have these magic numbers hidden away anymore. And if we have different themes changing, then we have different values for these, but we don't have to worry about it when we're writing this bit of CSS. We're just worried about plugging it. This is maybe not the best example because I've actually named these colors. It might make more sense if it was something like primary, secondary. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that. Primary, secondary. So now it's not saying, hey, specifically, it has to be green. This use case makes a little more sense. So that primary, maybe it's a plum color, maybe it's a green color. That's up to the style, to the theme. I don't really have to think about it when I'm writing these styles here. Okay. So now that we've got all of this sorted, make sure everything's still working, and I'll go ahead and show you. We can see here we've got the styles where these custom properties, the colors, primary, and a hash, they're all being defined here. And then they can later be referenced in these styles. So it's inheriting from the root these custom properties. And then if we check our button, we can see that's where it's being referenced. So pretty neat how this all compiles down. There are some other things we can do in terms of global styles. And I'm going to show you right now what that would look like. And keep in mind, my folder structure is a little bit arbitrary. It's not arbitrary that I'm naming these whatever .css.ds. That's important. But you could put these themes or styles wherever you want in your project. That is totally up to you. So I'm going to show off now a global style. The way I would use this, let's say I want to make some changes to the HTML and body. I can just clear that selector, and it's time to get my box sizing to border box. And 2. And I'll set margin to 0. And again, make sure you're not actually typing CSS. VS Code even wants me to write CSS, but no, we're writing JavaScript. So now that I've got this, nothing immediately happens. For something like a global style like this, I would just come in here and import everything styles. That's all. And now you can see these buttons have gone up against the edge of my screen. I'm probably gonna want to change that. It's not a super great look. So I'm gonna give my body some padding. Say 16 pixels sounds good. And now they're back out from the edge a bit. So that is how you would do a global style that would apply to any instance of whatever selector you give it. One other place where a global style would be useful, and I probably won't type out this example, but I'll just explain it to you quickly, is that if you wanted to have a, let's say the child of this button was a paragraph tag for some reason, and you wanted to have nested styles. You can do certain kinds of selectors with styles. Like I can say on hover that the font weight is now 700. I can do that, but I can't have a selector where I'm doing something like this component and then paragraph child. That's not going to work. Every style in vanilla extract refers to one element, not to its children. So what you could do instead, I could import this base button after I export it, then import it into this file, and I could use that reference. I could say global style base button, and then I could put that like so, and then do the paragraph tag. Not the cleanest solution, but just letting you know that that's how you would do that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to put paragraph tags on our buttons because why? Why? Okay. So this is all pretty cool stuff, but we haven't really got to one of the coolest things about vanilla extract and what gets it really close to something like Tailwind, and that is sprinkles. Sprinkles is the tool of vanilla extract that lets you create sort of your own utility classes. It's been very neat so far that everything we're doing gets turned into its own hash class, but they're not super reusable. You know, I want to be able to reference the same value of a border radius and lots of things, or colors. So we're going to use the sprinkles system to do that. And same convention, always. Just referencing my notes here. I want to make sure I get it correct. else annoyed with the order of imports. Like if I could just say from vanilla extract first and then get the auto completion of the things I want to get out of it, that would be wonderful. But alas, not the world we live in. And while I'm at it, let's go ahead and get my bars. See, sometimes it goes, sometimes it doesn't. For sprinkles, what we're going to want to do is define different sets of properties and then combine all of these properties into the one big sprinkles thingamajig, which is going to let us use them. So I'll show you what that would look like. Every property, it's going to have different conditions, which would be, for example, with responsive designs, conditions would be mobile, tablet, desktop, or it could be light mode or dark mode. Those would be your conditions. The properties, that's your CSS. You'll have a default condition as well. So let's do some colors. Color properties equal define properties and conditions. Let's do light and dark mode. That's a pretty common condition. So light mode. And I'm not actually going to type out the media query for light mode since it's just sort of default. And we're actually going to just go ahead and say default condition light mode. And we'll have our dark mode condition. And here we'll actually say media prefers color scheme dark. And TypeScript is yelling quite a bit. So rather than hunt down exactly what I did, I'm just going to copy and paste some clean code. Okay, so what did I do? Why is it yelling at me? I'm going to copy and paste some code I wrote earlier that is basically the same thing. There we go. That's a lot quicker. Let's see. Q&A is soon, by the way, so I'll try and go as quick as I can. I've been a lot slower than I meant to be. I guess that's just how it goes when you're doing a presentation like this. So here we've got some color properties, and I didn't really discuss this part, but again, it's really hard to have certain things like hover styles. So if I want, say, a hover change in color, I have to have that as a separate condition, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. No, I'm just gonna hide that. Just pretend it's not there for the moment. So now I have my light mode and dark mode, and I've got my color set, and I'm going to go ahead and create sprinkles. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and add in some more code that I wrote previously. We're going to have some different amounts of space. Here's an object just defining names of different spaces I allow. And let's add none. And there's some space properties with conditions that conform to, like, mobile or desktop. That's actually pretty narrow, but as you can see, the way I've got my screen set up, that's as good as that's going to get. You would probably want more properties than just these for using these different spaces, but But keep in mind, every property you add, every new set of properties that you put in here, that's more and more utility classes that are going to be created. So don't do more than you need to. There's not, to my knowledge, a good way to prune CSS that vanilla extract creates that's not being used. So just don't create things that you're not going to use. Sorry, little manual on that end. Maybe they will have something more automated later. So I've got my sprinkles now. I'm going to go back to my button and I'm going to bring in my sprinkles. So as I said earlier, you can have, for a style, an array of things. And sprinkles can be one of the things in your array. And I've got this border and border radius. And actually, let's I'll add border to that too. But instead of having those defined here, I'm going to say border, and on mobile, it's going to be still, I think, none. Let me see how I did this. I want to make sure I'm making this look great and not wasting your time with typos. So I can say no border on mobile, and again, because that's the default, that will also work on anything else. Should border radius, however, will get more interesting. We'll say on mobile it's medium. I don't remember what the sizes were, and we'll make it on desktop something absurd just so you can see the difference. Anymore. So now we're using sprinkles to control that, and we're able to create different spacings for these dependent on the media queries that we specified as conditions in the sprinkles. So let's make sure that's working as expected. So how wide is my screen? Ah, yes, because I'm zoomed way in. Let's make sure. Let's change that just for demonstration purposes. Yay, live coding. It's always fun, right? Well, I will at least show you what the sprinkles look like. So you can see now in this button class that it's got a lot of new utility classes based off the sprinkles that we created. So it's got border none mobile, border radius, medium mobile, and border radius extra extra large desktop. So it is adding different utility classes that would apply under different circumstances. And it looks like not clear why that didn't work as expected. Check my reference code. So why it's important to always go through this on your own at least once. Provocation, properties. I mean, that's just copy pasted. Well, got an idea. Everything's about to change. Buckle up. Okay, I've switched to an entirely different branch where I've already done all of this, and it definitely works. because we are running out of time and you're just going to get the tour. So, and here's the different space properties with the media query for our sprinkles going into this create sprinkles function. And then in our button, and there's some stuff in here I haven't covered yet, but you can see how I'm defining different border radius for mobile and desktop, and different things will change depending on the size. And fun stuff. And these are slightly different. I'm also using our colors here. So yes, coming back to the colors. Here we have different colors depending on, are we on light mode or are we on dark mode? I've got different names for these colors here than what you're used to, but if we go to our button and let's go see here. I've actually set these to different colors, but one of them has a difference between light and dark mode, and I can toggle light and dark mode in my dev tools, and you can see that the condition is working. So I have default dark mode, and when I have default dark mode, what I'm getting is these colors. But if I were on light mode, I would instead get these colors. So a little bit crunch for time near the end here. Can't promise that bit made as much sense as I'd like. Are we at Q&A time yet? Or can I keep going? Keep going. All right. So let's see what else we can do. There's one thing I have not talked about yet, and that is recipes. We're going to go on an adventure yet again. I'm going to completely change everything. And let's see. How ugly is all of this? This was a previous attempt. I mean, you thought my styles were bad before. Take a look now. So I'm going to close all the files I've been working on. And we are going to look at this component. So we can use yet another thing from Vanilla Extract called a recipe. And a recipe is pretty similar to style variants. So you can see here, there's a button style. That's the same as the one we were working on earlier with style variants. But now we have a recipe. And with this recipe, we can specify some base styles and our different variants. But we can also specify compound variants. Compound variants are interesting because certain combinations of the properties within variants will trigger a compound variant. So in this case, I've defined one compound variant where if you've chosen a color of the button that is destructive, and if you've chosen a size that is large, you will also get the styles border color dark red, border style solid width 2, font weight 700. And you can see these two buttons are both using this recipe. This small button does not have the combination of destructive and large, but this one does. And because it is destructive and large, it is really destructive and large. It gets the change in color, it gets the change in font weight. So that's a way you can sort of conditionally add even some extra things into your styles using the recipes. And of course, you have some default variants. So if you don't define anything, that's what you get. So here, if I have to find none of that, it is going to yell at me. It's like, hey, you should well, because this is really function. I define nothing. That's what the default for the recipe would look like. Okay. That is a whirlwind tour of most of what you would probably use in vanilla extract. It is pretty different from a lot of the other CSS systems out there. If you want a sort of roll your own Tailwind approach, this is potentially for you. You can build your own utility classes. You can put things together. You've got TypeScript for IntelliSense auto-completion and type safety. Like if I say color red, it's going to yell at me because that's not one of my options. I have to choose primary, secondary, destructive, whatever. So very handy in that way. And because you're writing your own design system, you don't have to constantly reference the docs and say, oh, was it LG colon MX hyphen, what was the number I need? Which is my experience with Tailwind at all times. You can just do it your own way. Yes, my Twitter handle, according to chat, @TVanAntwerp. That is really hard to spell. So, for anyone watching, boom. You click on that, for sure, you're doing something destructive. All right. Feel free to check out the docs for vanilla extract, where they go over in probably better detail than anything I did. All of the fun things that you can do with vanilla extract, going more into some of the philosophy and the different APIs available. There are plenty of functions that I didn't cover that would be useful if you really want to adopt vanilla extract or just try it on a project. Another thing I would recommend if you're interested in what you've seen today with vanilla extract and want to see how would this look in a real world project and not the hideous demo constructions of a live streaming programmer. Check out framework.dev from this doc. Framework.dev uses vanilla extract. First of all, if you like React in particular, we're working on some other sites, but React is the one we've got up. You can come here, find various different resources for React, books, podcasts, new libraries to try, whatever you want. It's very cool stuff. Helped to build it, so I'm a little biased. But also, it's open source. You can come on GitHub, and you can check out how we set all of this up. All of the components that we have built for framework.dev are using vanilla extract. So you can see in a real world project, what would this look like? Here we've got a little chip component built together using the utility classes from some sprinkles and a bunch of custom things. There's some syntax for how to do selectors, by the way. There are a couple of different ways to do that. But I would encourage you, if you've got more interest, feel free to come check this out. And also, again, it's open source, so feel free to contribute. And I think that pretty much covers it for me. Let's check the chat and see if there's some questions I can answer.
We do. We have one question, which is coming from Dustin Goodman. So he's asking, explain more about this Tailwind alternative. This seemed like it was somewhat tied to components, but Tailwind is global. What's your suggested approach?
Right. So with the sprinkles, what you're getting is when you create sprinkles and you're feeding it all of these properties, it is creating a style sheet full of these utility classes. So it is in some ways global. Let's see here, sprinkles. So you can see that it has created a whole bunch of utility classes that we can use anywhere. And one thing that's important to understand for the mental model of how vanilla extract works is that when you are feeding a vanilla extract style into class name, that's in the end getting turned into a string with a class name. So it's going to be referencing any of these, which is interesting because not only can you use sprinkles within your styles. So let's see, where's a good example? Not that one. Not that one. No. How about? Well, you saw what I did. Not only are you using sprinkles within styles, but you can use them directly in your components, like so. That's probably not how you want to create the HTML in your app, but you get the idea. You can feed sprinkles directly into a class. So let's take this test ugly component. I can say, instead of whatever that is, sprinkles. I can directly say sprinkles and whatever. I don't even know what I have available on these sprinkles now. Is that really okay? And of course, you've got to define what mode you're on. Light mode, red. And because I'm not on light mode. That is a really light, can't even see it blue, but you can use the sprinkles directly in a class name if you want. If it's just you don't want to create a whole style for that specific piece of the component, you only need to use a couple of utility classes, you can use sprinkles to do it that way. And again, based on whatever conditions you happen to have. I usually like to just put the sprinkles inside of a declared style somewhere and combine it because I almost always need to do some extra customization on top of what's in those utility classes. But this is for those times when the utility classes will completely cover it. Perfectly good, perfectly valid way to do it. And even if you include sprinkles within the style itself, that will still parse out so that the class name is not showing the one class you composed with sprinkles. It'll show the unique parts of the class you composed with sprinkles, and then each of the classes from sprinkles. If that makes any sense. Probably
Very
not.
cool. Well, Dustin said he loved it, and thank you for that. So awesome job, Tom. Thank you so much for this amazing tutorial. We are out of time for questions, but I did drop Tom's Twitter handle. He also showcased it here earlier. So if you have any questions, if you're watching this on playback, feel free to reach out to him with any questions or comments. Again, thank you so much, Tom, for the tutorial. We're back tomorrow, same time, a next 3 tutorial with Atasoji. So stay tuned. Our last day of JavaScript Marathons tomorrow, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye.